All right, got to finish the story now. So Ferdinand gets assassinated by these members of the Black Hand in Sarajevo, a Serbian city in the Austrian Empire. And when the emperor finds out about the assassination of his nephew, he really wasn't that bummed out about it. Also, the world was in a kind of an interesting place. Between like 1870 and 1914, political leaders in these European states and the United States were getting assassinated all the time. There was an American president killed. There was a Russian czar. There was all sorts of lower level officials that had been assassinated in this time period. There have been kings and queens of the lesser states that have been assassinated, like in Serbia itself. But it gets to a deeper issue. While Serbia dreamed of Sarajevo being broken away from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and becoming part of Serbia, Austria dreamed of one day all of these new nation states that had won independence from the Ottomans becoming part of their empire. They saw these new nation states as weak and vulnerable, and Austria dreamed of one day including some or all of them in their empire. And Franz Ferdinand's uncle, the emperor, decided to use the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand as an excuse to threaten to attack Serbia. Austria sends Serbia an ultimatum. It was a 10-point ultimatum. And basically, it was an ultimatum that the Austrians, when they put it together, knew that the Serbians could never, ever agree to. And when the Serbians refused all 10 parts of the ultimatum, Austria threatened to declare war. But there's a problem. Yes, this should just be between Austria and Serbia, except it's not. Serbia has an ally. Serbia had a military treaty with Russia. Ethnically, Serbs and Russians are part of an ethnic group called the Slavs. The Russian Tsar saw himself as the protector of all Slavic people, and they also practiced the same form of Orthodox Christianity. And Serbia had an alliance with Russia, and this made things dicey. Because what if Austria attacks Serbia? And Russia then declares war on Austria? Does that mean everyone else is going to get involved? And that gets to an interesting question. When Serbia is threatened, Russia promises Serbia they will come to Serbia's aid if they are attacked. Now Austria sees this as potentially being a war not just between them and Serbia, but a war between them and the Russians and possibly Russia's allies. Austria then goes to their ally, the Germans, and they ask the Germans, listen, we have a treaty. But the treaty says that we only have to come to each other's aid if one of us is attacked. Do you consider the assassination of Ferdinand an attack on us? And if we go to war with Serbia and the Russians go to war, are you going to come to our aid? And the Germans respond to the Austrians with what we famously refer to as the blank check. The Germans tell the Austrians, if you go to war and Russia declares war, we are in, and we are in till the end. Knowing that if that causes Russia to get in war, Russia's allies are probably going to be forced into this war. Now, are the Germans going to war because of the assassination of Ferdinand? No. The Germans are going to war for all the other things that we have talked about. And this is why I say the assassination of Ferdinand is an excuse to go to war. It's not the cause of the war. This right here is a artistic depiction of the assassination of Ferdinand. And to the right, you see Ferdinand and his wife, who was also assassinated in Sarajevo that day by the Black Hand. Now, as the ultimatum for Serbia to surrender before Austria attack winds down, the Russians begin to mobilize their army. When the Russians begin to mobilize their army, the Austrians begin to mobilize and the Germans begin to mobilize, and that causes the French to begin to mobilize. And on August 1st, 1914, Austria declares war on Serbia. Austria attacks. When Austria declares war on Serbia, Russia declares war on Austria. When Russia declares war on Austria, Germany declares war on the Russians. When the Germans declare war on the Russians, France declares war on the on the Austrians and the Germans. And now everybody is in the pool. We collectively refer to this as the domino effect, because once two countries go to war, the dominoes fall. This is part of the flawed alliance system. There were two countries that, at least for a little while, kept their heads. The first country was Italy. Italy said to the Austrians and the Germans, no bueno. Our alliance said that if one of us was attacked, we would go to war. Austria was not attacked. Germany was not attacked. Austria started this war. We don't have a treaty to honor because the treaty never said we had to do this in the first place. And Italy is going to start off by sitting the war out. Unfortunately for the Italians, later on, they're going to do something breathtakingly stupid and join this awful, awful war on the British and the French side. That's a story we'll get into in a few days. The other country that kind of was waffling for the first few days was Britain itself. Britain had never really 100% said if there was a war they were going to go into it or not. They just said they had friendly relations with the French and the British and left the particulars somewhat vague. However, and we'll talk about this in the next class, they're going to come and join the war very, very, very quickly, because one of the things that they were very, very concerned with was the plight of this little country right here, Belgium. And we'll talk about some of the issues at the beginning of the war that's going to cause the British to join the war. But on August 1st, 1914, war has been declared, and all these major powers, except for Britain and Italy, have mobilized their armies and are beginning to jump in. A couple of other things about the war that I just think are interesting. The monarchs of the three most powerful states, the German Emperor Wilhelm II, King George of England, and Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, they are all first cousins. They are the grandchildren of a famous British monarch named Queen Victoria. Victoria was a monarch who ruled for, it was at least 60 years. It may have been 70 years. She ruled for a long time. And the monarchs of all the powerful European states were all very, very inbred, just to be honest with you. And her daughters married Russian and German princes, who and their children eventually became Tsar Nicholas II of Russia and Wilhelm of Germany. In particular, of these three monarchs, Wilhelm and Nicholas actually had a pretty good relationship, even though they were on alternate sides of an alliance that were eventually going to cause a war to happen. This is my favorite picture, or one of my favorite pictures, I should say, of World War I. And it encapsulates how a lot of people in these countries felt. August 1st, 1914, when these major powers declared war on one another, there was a large amount of excitement. This This war had been building up for a long, long, long time, and now it was finally here. When this is a picture of the city of Munich on August 1st, 1914, when it's announced that Germany is going to war. And it's announced to a happy, cheering crowd who are ushered into a wave of nationalism and pride and can't wait to join. Most people thought the war was going to last 3 months. They were very, very, very wrong. This is going to be the worst war in human history up to this point. Millions are going to be slaughtered in a senseless violence. And one of the things I just can't emphasize to you enough is how stupid the leaders of each of these major states were to get their countries into a war about this. Of all the things I've told you about the reasons for this war, I haven't given you a good one yet. There's no good reason for this war. All these causes are fundamentally stupid. Like in World War II, you can make a moral argument that the United States had to join the war. You know, there was a psycho who was trying to conquer the world. In World War II, it's pretty clear to identify good guys and bad guys. Hey, the bad guys are the ones slaughtering 9 million Jews. In World War I, I'd argue everyone's a bad guy. This is just a dumb war that never needed to be fought. And I want you to notice something. In this crowd, on August 1st, 1914, is a 23-year-old vagabond, Adolf Hitler. The war is going to shape Adolf Hitler in a deep and profound way. On August 1st, 1914, he's part of a cheering crowd. 2 days later, he's joined the army. And he's going to spend 5 years in the front lines. One of the things I think about a lot is this. The world slaughters millions and millions of incredibly gifted and talented people in this war. I oftentimes ask myself, did the person who would have cured cancer die in this war? Did the person who would have come up with the global institutions to provide global peace, did he or she die in this war? But of all the people who die in the war, I think so oftentimes about the person who didn't. Hitler joins the war from the very, very beginning. He fights in the front lines for 5 years. And I would say somewhat miraculously, he survives. I don't think it is hyperbole at all to say that in the next 5 years, hundreds upon hundreds of times, a British, a Canadian, a French, or an American soldier had him in the crosshairs, took a shot, and just missed. But this war is going to shape him profoundly in many ways. You could argue that Hitler is the most important, and when I say important, I mean influential person of the 20th century. Remember, influence doesn't have to be happy. If I punch you in the face, I've influenced you. And we'll tell more about his story going forward in this class. But right now, I want you to get this. This is a dumb war fought for dumb reasons. There was great excitement by the nations of both sides that were involved. We honestly just couldn't wait to get started. We'll talk about the war itself and why it was so terrible in our next class period. Y'all have a wonderful day.